If you've ever spoken with anyone at the County Extension Office, you may have heard them reference some fact sheets and research stations and field days. Today we are at the Mingo Valley Research Station in Bixby, Oklahoma, and we're going to be joining some of those researchers as they talk about their studies.
On today's tour of the OSU Mingo Valley Research Station, Tulsa County Extension educator Kenda Baker joins host Casey Hinges for a tour of the fruit variety trials at the station. Southeast Area Horticulture Specialist Jim Schreffler gives us an update on the study using row covers to protect squash plants. And Extension Turfgrass Specialist Justin Moss shows us how little squares of turfgrass can help make a big impact in water usage. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, Tulsa's source for great gardens, southwoodgardencenter.com. and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
Joining us is Kenda Woodburn, and she is the horticulture educator for Tulsa County and Osage County. And Kenda, you've got some research. We are at the Mingo Valley Research Station here in Bixby, and you've got a lot of research going on. Can you share with us what you're looking at on these blackberries?
Yes, this is a replicated study of blackberries. We have 12 different varieties, and what our goal is to look at the standard varieties we know do well in Oklahoma, the Osage and the Washita, and compare it to some of the new varieties out of Oregon and some of the other research stations. We have Black Magic out here and Black Diamond, and what we're looking at is how cold-hardy they are, how much they withstand the hot Oklahoma summer, how soon they fruit, what yield they have, and also see maybe might be some built-in insect resistance in them, because we know that in different plant populations that insects will selectively feed more in one variety than the other. So this will kind of show us what's going on.
Okay, so your controlled are basically the traditional recommended varieties, but we've got new varieties that you're testing, and all of this is so that we can continue to update our fact sheets that we provide to people.
Yes, because everything OSU is supposed to present to the commercial growers and to homeowners is fact-based, and so we try to maintain research plots out here at the Mingo Research Station, so growers and homeowners can come out and see if they actually like the plant we're growing and see how healthy it is.
So I see that you're growing it on white plastic here. What are some of your other controlled methods for the weeds and diseases and stuff?
What we mainly be doing right now is mechanical controls, because we're trying to look at integrated pest management and use as least insect sprays and herbicides as possible, because I have a wide clientele. Some are organic growers and some are follow all the conventional spraying, and I'm trying to walk a line between the two so we can kind of know. So we're only trying to spray or use herbicide or insecticide when it's absolutely necessary. Part of what we're going to do is put out insect traps next year. There's some insects like spotted-winged Drosophila that's really hit our state berry crop hard, and also look at stink bugs and selective feeding, because like I mentioned earlier, the insects tend to selective feed on certain varieties more than others. So we'll kind of find that out.
So Kenda, when did you plant these blackberries?
Well, we planted them in June 2015, but the preparation for this started actually 4 years ago, because when we first got our research plots here, the organic matter was very low. So first we put in cover crops to build the soil, and we also reduced whatever weed population was out here. And so the first main crop, we had some fruit this year, but not enough really for a main harvest, just to kind of do observational research on and see how they did. And then next year will be our first main harvest. And so we'll plan on harvesting these for up to maybe 5 years. There are some insects that can get in here and kind of wipe out the plants after that, but we're hoping to avoid those like the redneck cane borer and crown borer and everything. But before we can release one of the fact sheets, we need at least 2 good years of data.
Okay.
And it can be observational, but I prefer observational plus replicated because that's statistically, you can analyze it statistically.
So I know you just updated the fact sheet last year.
Yes.
So in a couple of years, you'll be using this research to then update it once again.
Yes, myself and Becky Carroll and Dr. Hillebrand, we all updated that fact sheet, and we looked around the state, saw what the growers were doing well with, what was being marketed. And so we did add some new varieties like the Osage we saw in the Washita, and the Natchez were doing quite well.
And
here.
who else helping you collect all this data?
Irvin Bellamy has been helping me. We're also looking at some of the master gardeners and just we're hoping to get some graduate students in here to work from the university because it would be very beneficial for them to have this hand-on experience. And also, I have different homeowners and people that have said, we'd like to come help you collect data. So I'm going to call on them and it would be really good. And what we've done with some of the fruit, in the past is in other places where I've worked, some went home with the people that helped in the plots. That's their thank you. And other went to like the Eastern Food Bank and different charities. So that's what we're hoping.
Now, we're not just doing research on blackberries here. You also have some research on some peach trees and some apple trees.
Yes, and I'm setting it up in the same way. We have replicated studies in case somebody wants to do a journal article on these. We're looking at disease-resistant apples and seeing how they'll do, and against a standard. So I have some varieties like Liberty and Liberty Apple, and then Williams Pride, and comparing it to Arkansas Black, which we know will grow here, and Molly's Delicious that will grow here. And I wanted people to actually see some of the varieties that are being offered in the nurseries because you don't see a lot of these in the supermarket.
Right.
And then also the peach varieties, I'm testing some of the low acid peaches from France has released a couple, the white acid, low acid peaches, and we're going to add some from Arkansas to that study. So all these studies will be added on to through the years.
So I know a lot of times homeowners are curious, or growers are curious about the latest and greatest, and basically what you're doing here is taking that and really researching to see whether it does well specifically in Oklahoma.
Yes, and of course we are in zone 7A, 6B, so it'll be mainly geared toward this, but we do know from other states, whether or not it'll translate down a little bit south or a little bit north, so at least it'll give us a starting point.
Excellent. And you also have a big field here in between us and the peach trees over there. You got plans for that as well.
Yes, I've been asked about honeyberries. Honeyberries is a really cool berry crop that is very high in nutrition. It's got a very good flavor profile. Some of them don't do so well in the high heat, but we don't know which ones yet. Okay. We know there's a breeder in Arkansas that's working with them, so I'm going to try some of their varieties that are there, and there's some from Saskatchewan we're going to try, and then Oregon. And put these out and test those. Are also jujubes, which we know do well in Oklahoma. Most of the varieties, there's only 4 that I know of, but the ones that I've seen do well here. And then also looking at pawpaw trees, and Kentucky State University is where I'm going to test some of their varieties and see how they do here.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us, Kenda, and sharing your research with us.
You're welcome.
Joining us now is Jim Scheffler, and he is a vegetable extension specialist, and you've got some squash trials going on here. Can you kind of tell us what you're doing with these?
Right. This is a trial that we've been doing to look at some alternative methods of dealing with some of the insect pests and also the important pollinators that are involved in squash production, that are needed for squash production.
So when we talk about pests and squash, a lot of times we're talking about the squash bug. Is that the primary?
This was set up to look at a few different pests, but it's turned out to be squash bug is the predominant one. And this trial's being done at 3 different locations in the state, in Atoka and also in Shawnee.
Okay.
And at each site, squash bug has been the predominant insect.
Okay, so what are
pest.
we doing with the row covers? How is that helping or preventing those pests?
Okay, what we're doing with these row covers now, at the start of the season, in fact, right when we planted this squash, we put these row covers on and they were closed up completely, sealed around the bottom. You can see a wire there that was used to hold it in place. The idea with the covers was to keep the insect pests, which they don't overwinter in the soil. They come and fly into the area. And if you have a cover over your squash plants at that time when the plants are small, those insect pests cannot get to the squash.
Okay, so we initially get a good plant, solid plant growing under those row covers.
Right.
But then when they start to bloom, we need pollinators.
Right. If you and we in some cases we leave the cover on there and just let the plant grow. You get a big, huge plant with lots of flowers, but no fruit.
Okay.
The reason is because the pollinators could not get to it.
So if you're after just squash blossoms, that would work.
Yeah, right.
But if we're wanting the fruit, then we obviously need to open it and allow those pollinators to get in there.
Right. So that leads up to what we're doing here. There's some different treatments here that involve different timings of when to remove that cover. One is just a matter of when you remove the cover. Another has to do with looking at leaving the cover on, opening it up briefly in the morning, and then closing it back up.
Okay.
Again, minimize the amount of time for the insect pests to get to the squash, but allowing time for the pollinators to get in there and do their job.
Okay, and you've had some that as soon as they started flowering, you took that row cover off, and they're not looking so good anymore.
Right. If you basically, and it probably helps if you do that, but if you remove the cover that early in the season, when the plants are still small, when they begin flowering, then those squash bugs and other insect pests can start getting to the plants and do the different things they do to damage the plants.
So why on the other ones are you waiting till the morning and just the morning to open them?
Okay, now we really kind of learned some about this as we start with this, but the blossoms on the summer squash, it'll be open at daylight. I haven't come out in the night to see what time during the night it opens. I'd like to do that, but they're open at daylight and the pollinators are there. By 10 o'clock in the morning, some days 9:30, some days 10:30, the flowers are pretty much closed up, so no more pollination is occurring in the squash. So,
okay, so you're limiting your exposure then to those pests.
Right, so there's no reason to leave the pollinators in there after that time since the flowers are closed. And we can close it up, we'll reduce the time. Now it's not going to eliminate them completely because some will get in there while it's open, but it reduces the numbers of the insect pests that get to the plants.
And when we talk about pollinators, is there one particular insect that's a pollinator for the squash, or are there a lot of different?
When we started this trial, and again, we didn't bring any pollinating insects in here, anything like that. We just assumed, and we kind of figured that honeybees would be the main pollinator. As it turned out, again, 2 years at 3 different locations, across years and across locations, there were different insects there to pollinate. At some of the sites, it was mainly bumblebees. At others, there were a few honeybees. Then in here in this site, we had bumblebees here, but we have another insect here, and I don't know if they'll see it on the camera. I think it's called a squash bee. I have some collected to get to the entomologist to identify. But this has been, at one of the sites, this was the predominant insect that was in there doing the pollinating. So
this research has been going on for about 2 years, and you're doing a couple of more different experiments up here with the time intervals. When can people expect results for this? We have
one commitment to present some of the data at the 1st of October. There'll be an Oklahoma Organic Conference in Oklahoma City on October 6th and 7th, and we committed to making a presentation at that event, so we'll have some of it ready for then. But again, we have 2 years and 3 sites, and we have a lot of good information. It'll take a few months, but we'll get it all worked up, and I think there'll be some really useful information for home gardeners, farmers market growers, organic farmers. That this, with these insect pests, there are no organic insecticides, approved insecticides to deal with squash bug that are really effective. So this will be useful information for a lot of different growers, I think.
Wonderful. And you've also got some research going on watermelons. Let's go take a look at that.
Okay.
So Jim, you have some research going on the watermelon here, and this is looking at pre-emergent application?
Yes, this is looking at a herbicide that we hope to have approved hopefully for next year, and mainly for commercial watermelon growers. It's a herbicide that basically the grower would plant the watermelon seed and apply the herbicide on the soil surface, and it'll provide control for a lot of different broadleaf weeds, which, you know, a little patch like this, not a big deal, but if you're talking about 100 acres of watermelon, growers can't afford to have people out there with a hoe hoeing the weeds. And if the weeds take over, they don't harvest any watermelons.
Right, right.
Now, another thing about it, again, I don't have that here, but in earlier trials, this can also be used with watermelon that are transplanted, and more people are growing, commercial growers are growing seedless watermelon, and you pretty much have to transplant that. And they don't have a good herbicide for controlling weeds for the transplanted melons right at this point in time. So it'll be useful for those folks too.
So why is this pre-emergent an experiment right now?
It's, again, we've done several years work with this herbicide, and we found that it gives good weed control, and it's been safe to the watermelon crops we used it on. However, we haven't used a lot of different watermelon varieties. So in this trial, we have actually five different watermelon varieties superimposed over the herbicide treatments. So we'll be able to tell if maybe one variety is susceptible to injury from the herbicide and another not.
And are you using the same herbicide, the same pre-emergent, or is there different pre-emergents being used here?
No, on a given, this herbicide is called Reflex. And where you see there's a green flag here, for example, that green flag from here down to the yellow flag, that's one treatment of this Reflex herbicide. And then within that section, that's divided up into 5 plots about 12 feet long, and each of those has a different variety in them.
A different variety of watermelon.
Right,
okay,
so,
all right. But it's the same pre-emergent that you're applying everywhere.
Yes,
And it's not labeled quite yet for watermelon in Oklahoma, is that correct?
No, it is in some states, I think in Missouri and North Carolina. Again, the paperwork is being processed to get it approved for Oklahoma.
Fantastic.
So,
well, I know this will really help the watermelon growers, and thank you for sharing your research with us.
My pleasure.
Here at the Mingo Valley Research Station, Dr. Justin Moss also has some research going on. And can you tell us about your research?
Yeah, we're standing here in the middle of some turfgrass plots. What we see behind us and in front of us here is really just some Bermuda grass and some zoysia grass. And we just planted this trial about 3 weeks ago, so all you see is a few little grass plugs coming in. But what we're going to do is we're going to irrigate these plots to grow these in, and then we're basically going to shut the water off on these. And what we're trying to look at is how do these grasses respond to drought conditions here in Oklahoma.
So why is this important to people in Oklahoma to check for drought tolerance?
I think it's very important because a lot of our cities, well, obviously we all use water, and a lot of our cities are looking at ways to conserve water or reduce the amount of total water use over the year. So one of the easy ways we can do that really is reduce outdoor water use. And so if we have grasses that we can put in our lawns and we don't have to water them as much, but they stay green and pretty, then that could save a lot of water for Oklahoma and for our cities.
Okay, and now you're not just doing this trial here in Bixby, you're also doing it in Stillwater, and you're partnering with other universities?
Yeah, this is a great cooperation between many universities. Actually, I have grasses here I'm evaluating from Oklahoma State University, of course, and our breeder, Dr. Yangchi Wu, but also from the University of Georgia, the University of Florida, North Carolina State University, and the Florida University. It's our University of Florida. And so not only do we get their grasses to look at and see how they do in Oklahoma, but we also ship our grasses off to them and see how they work, across the region. And so we're here in Bixby, and this particular research station here in Bixby is surrounded by sod producers and sod farms. And so the things that we're doing here, hopefully we can identify improved cultivars with improved traits like drought tolerance, and then our growers can get these and can grow them on their farms and then sell them and be productive. And actually our growers here in Oklahoma are really productive. If you look at sod production in the U.S., our growers rank 5th in terms of sod production in the United States. So
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing with us.
thank you.
Today we're doing peach and chicken salad. It's really quick once you get everything put together, and even the consideration that I've already got everything put together before I get on camera, it's still pretty quick. So I'm going to start with 1/3 cup of honey and just squish that in there. I don't want to spend too much time getting the honey out of the container. We'll come back later with toast. And then 1/4 cup of raspberry vinegar or red wine vinegar, whichever vinegar you have, that's got a little bit of pink color. A pink champagne vinegar would be great too. Also 1/4 cup of plain low-fat yogurt. And 1 tablespoon of Dijon mustard. You can use a different kind of spicy mustard on this one too. Now notice this one does have a fair amount of sugar in it. It is going to be a sweet dressing. The sugar is in the honey, of course. Also to it, we're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2 teaspoons of olive oil, and 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. I'm doing it in this great big bowl, not because even I could slosh it out of there, although watch that happen now, but because we're going to add the other ingredients right directly to the bowl. I'm all for any time we can cut down on the number of ingredients or number of dishes that we have to work with. So whisk that together fairly well inside the giant bowl. And then to that we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. I've got 2 cups of chicken. This is grilled chicken. You could use chicken that you've grilled. You can buy grilled chicken in the market in plastic bags now. You could actually use a rotisserie chicken, so there are lots of choices there. This is probably one of the key ingredients. I got 1½ cups or so. It's about 1½ to 2 peaches that I've washed. I've left the peel on them. You could take the peel off if you wanted to. I don't see any reason that that's necessary, but some people have a dislike of the peel. Once they're washed, that fuzzy stuff that most people object to is going to be gone. Another sort of myth is that all of the nutrition is right under the peel. And that's not the case with any fruit or vegetable. There is nutrition under the peel, but there's also a lot of it elsewhere too. So you don't have to feel bad if you do feel the need to peel for food safety reasons or those kinds of things. But if you like the peel on it and it's something like this, then go ahead and leave it. It saves you a little bit of time. I've got an equal number of red grapes. You could use green or black grapes. I like the red ones because they have a little bit of contrast. We get a little bit more color from the peach too when we leave the peel on. Also, I've got a cup of diced celery. We're going to mix those around. And then the last thing I've got is about 1/2 cup of toasted pecans. And again, if you want to use other nuts, you could, but if you're from Oklahoma, it's almost insensitive to the state to use a walnut. All right, that's all there is to it. What I would do if I was at home is cover it with some saran, probably put it in a little bit smaller bowl as well, put it in the refrigerator for at least 30 minutes to give the flavors time to blend. This will hold fairly well for a while, but the peaches will start to discolor on you, so don't plan on making it today and serving it 2 days down the line. If you don't like a lot of the dressing on your salad, you also might consider serving it with a slotted spoon. This is a main dish salad. That's what all that chicken's for, is to give you plenty of protein. But it also has everything else you need as well, with the exception of some dairy. So you could sprinkle a little bit of cheese over it, or serve it with some milk, or have a little bit more yogurt besides that little bit we put in the dressing. I hope you'll try this one. It's peach and chicken salad. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead.
Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, we will learn about the psychological benefits of labyrinth gardens. We check in on monarchs along the roadside. Casey has a beautiful and tough tree for the landscape that also provides a sweet treat. And Barbara Brown will have a tasty recipe. So join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society. We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.